Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State Podcast. I'm Matthew Brune. Joining me once again today is Ishmael Johnson. And Ish, we are joined by Jason Burton, head coach of North Texas women's basketball. Coach, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm great. Good to be on again. Good to talk with you guys, talk basketball with you guys this morning.
Yeah, standards already been set. I told you we had a lot of coaches on already. So, now that you've seen some practices and everything like that, you can give us the real insight to how your team's looking this year.
I mean, it's early, right?
It's early. There you go. There you go. Coach talk off the rip.
It's
Off the
early.
rip.
It's early, and we don't have everyone on the floor. But
Uh,
I still think just from where we were last year, if we're gauging off of last year, I think
Yeah.
we're better than we were last year. But everything else, it's gotten a little bit harder, right? Like
Oh
your
yeah.
non-conference schedule has got a little bit harder. Your conference schedule is a little bit harder because they kind of do it based off of projected finishes. And so, last year they projected us to finish toward the bottom, and this year, based on our schedule, I feel like they're projecting us to be closer to the top. And so, everything's a little bit tougher this year. But I do feel like our players are comfortable, right? Like they're in a space where it's not brand new to them. They're not trying to get to know each other. They're not trying to get to know our staff, so to speak. Like they know what the expectations are, whether they were on the team last year or they got recruited this spring, kind of just knowing what we did last year. They know what the expectations are. And then so I think we're ahead of where we are, but we got some key players that we got to get healthy.
What was last year like for you? 23-9 year one. I mean 13-5 overall. Just what for you, what was that like, and to see your players excel in that way?
If you look at the A&M game, I was like, I don't know what this year is going to be like.
Yeah.
We came out, we're down like 30 at halftime versus A&M, and then we go down to SFA the next game and win a big game at SFA, which is hard to do. And so going over there and getting that win, I kind of felt like we had a chance to be special. Once we figured some things out and players started getting confident as far as like just being able to win. But you don't expect it to go the way it did, obviously, not in year one. So extremely proud and fortunate to have so many things come together, so to speak, because this time last year, I probably said the same thing. We just had a lot of players out with injuries,
Mm.
and you don't know how that's going to affect the team, especially when Deanne Robinson's coming off of an ACL. You don't know kind of what that's going to look like, how she's going to be, how quickly she's going to get back to form. And then we kind of made the decision to bring her off the bench and
Mm.
didn't know how she was going to respond to that. And it was one of the best things that happened for us because, Desiree Colonel emerged and Tamisha Lampkin was just one of the best posts in the country. Look at the numbers. And then so
Mhm.
when you have those two that are kind of scoring it, we went with Ariana Hardaway at the point guard, who's more of a pass first type point guard, and did a phenomenal job of, kind of starting the game for us, getting them touches, and then we were able to bring Deanne Robinson off the bench and allow her to do what she does, and that
Mm.
scored the ball. And so I think it was incredible how things kind of fell into place. Obviously, we raised the bar and the expectations around our place pretty quickly. I think we were sitting at 10 home wins consecutive to start the year, and then we dropped two back to back at home, and everybody's looking at us crazy. And I'm like, I guess that's a good thing that people expect us to win now, but it had been a while, and so it was fun to change things so quickly. But now now we got to do it again, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like you mentioned, getting picked near the bottom in the preseason this time last year, and a lot of people not knowing, a lot about you, a lot about the players you bring in, or like if they do, there's like, oh, they've got it done at that level. Like, thinking of Colonel and Robinson as well. It's like, oh, they got it done at a certain level, but what happens when they go over here? You know, how much did that help rally your players around that message about like, hey, these guys aren't, I mean, a lot of people aren't expecting much from you, right? And it's like, especially with somebody like Desiree, who, she was kind of the number two at Commerce for a little bit to Robinson, where how much did that kind of help you motivate them and that team, and especially Colonel as well, to where it was like, hey, a lot of people aren't really having much expectations for you.
Yeah, I think Desiree and Deani kind of used to kind of playing with a chip on their shoulder. That's just kind of
Mm.
how we were at Commerce, and we were always, even if we had a good year, it was always West Texas A&M or Lubbock Christian that were kind of picked ahead of us. So they're just used to
Sure.
playing with a chip on their shoulder. But you hate to see Deanna Robinson go down, but I think that was one of the best things for Desiree Colonel's development last year. She took on that role as kind of the lead dog for us the second half of conference play, or almost the first part of conference play in the Southland that year before. And she was doing everything. I mean, she dominated every part of the game, and we were bringing the ball up the floor with her some and playing her at the one. She played 1 through 5 for us. And so I think she had a whole new level of confidence coming over to North Texas, and that definitely helped us. But I think, we were in the same boat. Like, is it going to translate? And at what degree? Like, it's going to translate. They're going to be able to play, but how good will they be at this level? And I mean, for Desiree Colonel to finish first team All-American, newcomer of the year, and Deanna Robinson to get the 6th Woman of the Year in the American Conference, I think it shows that when you can play and you play at a high level, that translates. And now they're both overseas right now playing professionally. And so huge testament to them as far as starting as D2 players. They go from D2 to Southland to American and found a way to have success at every level. And I do think that just from a confidence standpoint, Desiree came in and she knew us and knew our expectations, and she changed the culture really quickly when it came to workouts and the expectation in the workouts. And then when Deanna was back on the floor, same thing, just as far as, the experience of winning. And I think that's something that is oftentimes overlooked in college athletics. Like, if you know how to win and you are a proven winner, there's something in you. Like, there's something in your DNA that's just different. Like, and it's so infectious with the rest of the players. When you're confident in yourself, you're confident in your abilities of what it takes to win. And that's one of the things I think rubbed off on our players. And so right now you're looking at, where it was just 2 players that kind of knew the formula of how to win. Now we have 7 that, played game minutes last year that feel like they know what it takes to succeed in the American Conference. And so that's why I think we're in a better position than we were last year, just from a maturity standpoint.
Is it weird for you to not have Diane and Desiree on the court after how many years you spent with them?
5 years. 5
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
It's different. But I think that, like, the transition from Deani to Ariana at the point guard kind of helped a little bit. But also, like, before that, I had Princess Davis was my point guard, who's on my staff. And so I had a seamless transition from point guard from Princess to Deani. And we had a transfer for 1 year named Madison Glass that kind of helped transition the program along. And I think that already happened with Ariana as far as, like, the leadership role. And then we brought in a big time get in Kyla Deck as far as the point guard spot. And I just think the leadership across the board, we got veterans, players that aren't even playing right now, but Adele Tack and Amaya Brandon, as far as their leadership, have been huge. And then Tamisha Lampkin has just made leaps and bounds as far as her leadership. And then Jocelyn Moore, I mean, she's a 5th-year player. We're older on our roster again. And so that helps us as far as you're teaching how we do things at North Texas, but those are veterans that know how to play and know how to play the game the right way. So I think those things have helped. It's a little weird, but it's fun always having experience. And I think also sometimes as a coach, like, just that newness of, like, all right, what are we going to do now? We'll change our offense up a little bit. And I think that's going to help with this current roster of players.
Yeah, before we get into some of the new players, you mentioned Kyla Deck and then Adele Tack, but I do want to talk a little bit about one of the players you mentioned, Jocelyn Moore, because, we remember her from UIW, I guess now
3 years ago.
3 years ago now?
3 years ago.
I guess. And we had high expectations for her when she first went to UNT, and she struggled a little bit, whether it was adjustments to the kind of increased level of competition or adjustments to her new role. Regardless, she struggled. And when we saw that she was still going to be there when you got there, she was somebody who I think we felt we knew her scoring ability, and we knew that what she could provide for that team and for any team really. But it was just, for us, it was just a matter of, like, is there still that player there? What did you see from her that allowed her to kind of be more comfortable? Because it wasn't as if she set the world on fire, but it was just like we saw a player that was playing at that level, back to a little bit of what she was at UIW, where she was the go-to player. but it was just a little, it seemed like she just like played within herself a lot more than what she did the year before. What did you see from her?
Well, one, like when we got the job, she was, you know, who the gym rats are and
Mhm.
who the workers are, and she was that. One of the biggest things with Jocelyn was just her game so much, and so much of her confidence I felt like was predicated on, is the ball going in the basket or not?
Mhm.
That's a bad thing when you go through a period
Yeah.
where the ball's not going in the basket. And
Yeah.
so um, we just had to tell her there's so much more to her game than you know, shooting a three specifically. What's her response when a three is not going? And we've challenged her to be more than just a shooter. Um, and you'll see games where she's rebounding the ball, she's attacking the basket more. I think this year offensively, you're going to see her score in more ways too, just because of
Mhm.
playing a little bit differently offensively. I think sometimes you go into a situation and you have to do what you know as far as offense and how you want to play. We always knew we want to play a certain tempo, but you're still trying to get to know your roster. We had 9 players that we had to get to know. And so, you know, offensively, we did just what we know and what I felt comfortable with. And this year, I feel like we're doing more things that cater to the strengths of our entire team. And so I think you're going to see Jock score in different ways, but her defense is much improved. And that's one of the things that I'm excited about, because I felt like at the end of games, a lot of times we had to play offense defense with her, and we had to
Hmm.
take her out and put in Desiree Wooten down the stretch. And so you're playing offense defense when now we need them both on the floor at the same time. You've seen Desiree Wooten uh, really, really develop over the end of the season and into the summer. Her maturity and her being able to take on more responsibility as a player is going to be key for us this year. So,
Mhm.
Jock, you're gonna see good things from Jock this year.
Yeah. And then we kind of mentioned already, but Kyla Deck coming over from SFA. We all know how great of a program SFA is. She comes off a year where she was all WAC defensive team, basically 2 years as a heavy contributor. Started 27 games last year. When you start breaking down her game, for those who either haven't seen her or are interested in how she looks with y'all, just where do you start with Kyla Deck?
So you know, just talking defense first, one of the areas I felt like we needed to get better was just defense across the board. Defense and shooting were 2 areas that we felt like we gotta get better. And those are the 2 things she probably does the best is
Mhm.
she can knock down the three ball and she guards and gets up in people. They played a lot of zone. And so, you know, man to man is some of the man to man concepts that we want to be great at. She's working on right now. But when it comes to on the ball, just man versus man, I'm going to get a stop, and she is a monster with it. And so that's something that, if you know how I like to play, we like to press, we like to pressure up on people. She fits in as far as being another dog on the floor, and we can play her at the 1 and at the 2. And so, you know, when you look at, okay, how do you replace Deani Robinson, somebody that was a dynamic player for us, dynamic scorer, guard that played both the 1 and the 2. Kyla Deck is bigger than Deani.
Mhm.
Not as old, not as experienced, but man, she's going to bring some different things for us as far as just the defensive side of things, being able to post her up from a guard standpoint. And it's a consistent knockdown shooter. So, and her vision in the half court, man, her ability to drive, kick, and find open shooters is it's fun, man. It's fun playing with her. I had a chance to coach her sister, obviously, for 2 years at A&M Commerce and Mia Deck, and so she's the bigger version of her sister, and so really excited about what she brings to the table for us.
Did that help in the recruiting pitch? Did you?
I think it didn't hurt,
You
but obviously, you know, in this day and age with NIL and everything else, like you better have more than just a connection of a sister to
Yeah.
bring to the table. And I think the appeal of coming back closer to home was
Hmm.
something. She's got a superstar brother that plays at Frisco Lone Star football, and he's got offers from like everybody in the country. So I think that appeal is something as well. So
Another, I was going to mention, I was going to use this as a transition, but you already took it. Another sibling that you've coached before, Adele Tack, coming in from UTEP. You know, what does she add? Because obviously comes from an incredible family that just like basketball is just in their blood, as we saw her sister now plays in South Carolina. You know, obviously I believe she's coming off injury as well.
yeah.
But like when she was healthy, length, rebounding, playmaking from the post, like what What is she adding, and what do you think she can pair with Tamisha Lampkin in particular?
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to really coach her on the floor yet. She's
Sure.
battling back from injury, but man, knowing her family. I mean, her oldest sister, Ashell, played at North Texas.
Mhm.
Sister Zhang played for me for 4 years at A&M Commerce. Obviously, has a sister that's at South Carolina right now.
Yeah.
Basketball's in their blood, but man, she has been probably the most impactful player um, on our roster through 4 months. I mean, starting in June,
Mhm.
and that's just as far as leadership.
Mhm.
She It's incredible because she is coaching our players on the sideline in an offense that she didn't run before, but
Mhm.
she picks up things quickly and she's telling everybody where to go. And off the floor, she's leading. On the floor, she's leading. The stuff that I have been able to do with her, like on some one-on-one stuff,
Mhm.
her right hand is just as good as her left hand, and she's
Mhm.
right-handed. And so, the versatility that she's going to bring as far as being a low post scorer, great passer, but high IQ. And I think that's what's really good is that she's going to be able to play the 4 or the 5. So play with Misha or play somebody that when Misha goes out, they can play that 5 spot for us, that shoots it out to the 3-point line. And that's another thing, like rebounds. And so you look at the two biggest losses from last year's roster, and that's Desiree Colonel and Deani Robinson. And then you plug in two veterans and Kyla Deck and Adele Tack, and then you still have brought in other players that I think are going to just increase our depth this year. I'm really excited to get her back healthy. She's close. I think we'll have her at the start of the season. She probably won't be in game shape
Mhm.
at the start of the season, but we'll have her, at the start of the season. And so she's going to bring a lot to her. She's already bringing a lot to our team right now. She's a part of our leadership council, and she's going to make a huge impact for us in 1 year.
And then, I mean, you've kind of touched on a lot of these already, but the amount of returners that you have shouldn't be taken for granted, in today's day and age to have this many starters back, frankly. I mean, Irina Hardaway, Desiree Wooten, like you said, Shamari Duncan, and then obviously Tamisha Lampkin and a few more. What does it say, about what you're able to build, and then how valuable is that in terms of getting off to the right start in the season and not, having that kind of lag early on to where you're lose a game maybe you shouldn't lose or anything like that.
I it says a lot, for one, that we were able to retain pretty much our entire roster of players that could come back.
Hmm.
Um, that they obviously we won, and winning helps a lot when it comes to these days, but comes to these things. But in this day and age, it's hard to retain people. I don't care um, what you have, man. Some people are there's always going to be somebody in the players' ear talking about how the grass is greener somewhere else, but
Mhm.
for our players to stay, um, the development in the offseason is so key. And so, for us to be able to see what we had with our players last year, know exactly the things that they want to work on and we want them to work on, and come up with a plan for them to develop. And I really think, we talk about it all the time in our program, but the better the person, the better the player. Like, there were so many off the court things that we just needed to mature in. And I think I really feel like our players did a huge job of developing as people, and those things are translating onto the court. And so, how they handle their business off the floor definitely translates to the floor. And so, to see some of our players, and you're going to see, I think, a lot from Anaya Johnson this year too. She's somebody that we would sometimes go offense defense with her at the end of the year with Desiree Colonel. She was somebody that's just so long, so athletic, really impacts the game defensively, but she still had a ways to go just as far as being disciplined on a consistent basis. Of sometimes she overhelps. She just wants to do whatever it takes to get the stops, and sometimes that's the wrong play. Like, you're hurting us by overhelping. And so I think she's figured a lot of things out this year. I think the hardest year for any player is that first year, and Shadeja Brackens, who's our most athletic player. Um, we didn't know kind of what position she was at first. We started her as a 3, and midway through we put her at a 4, and that's probably a better position for her
Mhm.
from her skill standpoint. She's a slasher that dives to backside. She kills the offensive glass. She's a rebounder, but top of the press type person, and she's figuring a lot of things out too. So I think, having players that we really, really know and have gotten better. We know how to put them in position to have success. It's going to be key for us early on. Early on, those games, everybody's trying to figure out their team. And the more you know your team, the better. And this day and age, like you're going to play a lot of teams that have 10 new players. I wonder how many people you're talking to outside of Rice that are like, yeah, we got 10 new players or we got a whole new team. There's a lot of them out there that are playing with completely new teams, and you're trying to gel. And those first couple games, you're just trying to figure things out. And I feel like we got a good grasp on our team, and we'll slowly bring some of the new players along. But I think we're in a good spot though, because of that.
You mentioned, how hard is it to, I know a lot of it is figuring out your own team, but also like how hard is it in this day and age to not really know who you're facing a lot of the time? Last year was your first year in the American. And so you thought you had a grip of like, oh, this team does this team does this. And you can kind of have like, that certain teams are going to be built around one or two players if they hold on to those two. But like the rest of their roster, you're kind of going in like to a new season, basically, it feels like.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And but that's how we felt all last year. I mean, even with film, I got to the point where I was so comfortable in a Lone Star. I was like, all right, Gomez is going to do this, Proc's going to do this. And then I went to the Southland, and I'm like, all right, I'm trying to figure out these people. And after the first round, you kind of got to feel. You play somebody one time, you got to feel for them. And so the second time around, you kind of game plan a little bit better. But you go to the American, and we only played half the teams twice. So you're going into a lot of games where that game counts. You only play a team once. So you look at our season last year, we only played Tulsa once, only played South Florida once, Rice once, Wichita State once. So all of a sudden, those games are so important, and so it also takes a little bit longer to kind of get to know coaches, because even if you don't know the personnel, you kind of get a chance to know schemes and how coaches think, how they're going to put their players in position. And so we're still trying to figure out things. And so you just better have your team in a good position as far as what you do and being great. I think early on in the season, it's about what you do and being great at that, and hoping you prepared for zone, prepared for everything you might see.
How would you describe what it felt like to be in the American last year, when it felt like 1 through 10 was separated by, I don't know the exact numbers, Ish. If we talked about it with, was it Coach Aston or was it Coach Edmonds?
I know that Coach Lindsay Edmonds, y'all were talking about it a little bit, or she
That's
was
what it
talking about
was.
it. Man, if you walked in my office like in February, it was like a Rain Man on my dry erase board. I had like every scenario played out and what we need to do, what everybody else needs to do. We're trying to figure out how to win the league, and you're trying to predict who's going to win at what place, and then that doesn't happen. You're like, and sometimes it's a good thing, like, oh, so and so won, like we got a chance, and that's always a bad thing, because then you have a letdown. Like, we lost 2 back-to-back at home at playing UTSA to an overtime game, and then losing to Charlotte, who we felt like at home we're just supposed to win those games, and you don't. And so like those were separator games for us, and it ended up, we're right back in the mix of things. And so that next game we had to go out to UAB and win at UAB, and man, it was crazy last year. And I think this year is going to be tough too. I think a lot of people got better. South Florida had a down year last year. They're never going to have 2 down years in a row. So South Florida is going to play. And I just think we got so many good coaches, man, in this league. Karen Aston, the ones you've already had on, Karen Aston, Lindsay Edmonds are 2 phenomenal coaches. I think their teams are going to be really good this year. I think Memphis is going to be really good. Tulane has hired a new coach, and I think that Tulsa, again, even though she lost the player of the year, I think Tulsa is going to be right back in the mix. And so it's just a good league, man, and you have no off days in the American.
Yeah, you have 4 overtime games that I'll never forget.
4 overtimes versus East Carolina, and I'm like, I remember looking up and talking to the ref, like, "Hey, what overtime are we in?" They're like, "It's the 3rd overtime." I'm like, "I know you're tired. I'm tired."
Well, hey, it's better than when I coach AAU. My 15-year-old AAU, after the first overtime, it's first to score wins, and that is a type of intensity that I'd never want to live again. I'm like, please.
I just remember there's a play in front of our bench. There's a loose ball, and Tamisha Lampkin and Danae McNeil, their best player, they both dive on the floor for a loose ball, and they just lay there. And they're like, I know they're saying like, "Hey, you stay down, I'll stay down." This is for a little bit. I just know they're saying it because they were both down there for a while, and nobody was hurt. They were just tired,
just down there.
Like, they can play 4-on-4, and
get a little breather. Yeah, get a little breather.
And I just remember, like, we're in the coach's locker room after the game just for like an hour as a staff. Nobody, like, we were just exhausted. I'm like, I didn't know coaching you could really get this tired, but it was draining.
That's
It
insane.
was fun. I've never had that many text messages because, like, we got to the point. I think we were the only game on ESPN Plus, so everybody's
Late.
like, "Oh, double overtime, let's watch."
Yeah.
Double overtime.
That's
So
Kept going.
yeah.
oh.
And
Yeah,
they're
anything else?
going to be really good. They had two starters that tore ACLs like in November, December, and so those
Mhm.
players will be back this year. And their bigs inside are just so good. I know they're losing a really good player, but they'll be good again. They have a lot returning, and so the league's gonna be wide open again.
Yeah. Got anything else, Ish?
No, that's all I got. Appreciate your time, Coach.
Yeah, we got 6 minutes left on the Zoom since Coach can't figure out StreamYard.
Well, here's the thing, all right, and I know I didn't. That's not my fault. That's our IT. But I know Ish came up and went to a North Texas men's game and didn't come to a North Texas women's game. And I saw him. I almost walked across and said something to
Saw
him,
him.
but I didn't.
Oh,
I
he's
said,
calling me
I know
out.
I said I know I'm gonna be on a Zoom or a podcast at some point with him, and I'm just gonna put it in my back pocket and just let him know that he came to Denton, came to the men's
You know
game,
what? That's
didn't
fair.
say anything to us. That's
That's
cool.
fair.
We're the team in first place at the time.
You
It's
know
cool.
what? That is fair. That is completely
sick.
fair.
Drove
I'll
to
be-
Waco to watch
I will be
Baylor
there.
instead. That's
I will be.
crazy.
Hey, listen, all right. I will be there. I will be there at the Super Pit for a women's game. It'll either be that. Let's see. I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, what's the schedule? Hold on.
No, no.
Or I know the
I'll either be for SMU. I know SMU is going there. That'll be a great interstate game. I'm very looking forward to that one. Or it'll be when UTSA or Rice are there. I'll be there. I'll be there. One of those
UTSA
games.
does not come to our place.
Oh, they don't go this year. Okay.
Only
I'll
go
go-
to
Rice, January
But
15th.
we got
That's doable.
Rice, we
That's
got
doable.
South Florida, we got Tulsa, all coming to our place.
Okay. I try to lean towards interstate games. So like,
All right. Well, then Rice.
I will be there for Rice. I will be there for Rice. I will
Yeah.
say that right now.
January
So you heard it.
15th.
You heard it, Matt. If he doesn't come,
I
if he
heard
doesn't
it.
come,
Heard it. I can't wait. I can't wait. December 19th. Hey, maybe I can swing the SMU game. Well, let's see what we can do.
There you go.
I know I'm gonna be at the men's game in Frisco. Or no, LSU men's game in Frisco on the 16th, I think it is, or 15th, one of the two. So we'll see. But yeah, Coach, thank
I'll
you.
enjoyed it, man. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, appreciate you.